Thank you for joining us on WhatsApp Media Network, and thank you to Educare Student Services for sponsoring this show. Today is Autism Awareness Day, and April is Autism Awareness Month. Today we are going to discuss autism. Autism is a neurological developmental disorder that is affecting 1 in 42 boys and 1 in 62 girls. Autism is far more than an epidemic. It is affecting everyone, whether it be your sibling, your own child, your neighbor, your student. The chances of you knowing an individual with autism is great. Today we are going to discuss the early warning signs, the red flags, and any stigmas or stereotypes surrounded by autism. We are going to discuss early interventions that is crucial for the child's development, as well as discuss any resources and local resources in and around our community. I am honored to be joined by two professionals in the autism world, Miss Donna and Mrs. Carly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. If we'd like to start off first, thank you for everyone that's joining in on the live show. Feel free to leave any comments or let us know anything that you would like us to address as we carry the conversation today. I'd like to start off by having a brief intro to both of you and your fields.
Yeah. So my name is Carly Steiner. I'm a BCBA, and I've been in the field since 2012. My background is actually in special education. So I have my teaching degree from the University of Dayton, and then really found applied behavior analysis upon graduation. So that's really where I started to fall in love with the field. And I really was struck from the very beginning at how amazing the amount of progress children were making with applied behavior analysis. And quickly just knew that it was going to be the intervention and the career path that I wanted to continue to keep following and learning about. So I went and got my master's, and then I was certified with my board certified behavior analyst certification in 2015. And from there, I've worked in a variety of clinical settings, so in centers, in schools, and in homes as well.
Work.
Hi, I'm Donna Bazzi. I've also been in the field since 2012. I started off as a technician. I kind of just stumbled across the field in undergrad while I was at Wayne State. I ended up getting my bachelor's in psychology from Wayne State, and then moved on to get my master's in educational psychology at Wayne State as well. I sit in for my board exam soon. Something that kind of drew me to the field as well was just kind of watching kids grow and watching the changes you can make every day in children's and families' lives.
Definitely, and I just wanted to note that both of you being invited here to the show is because both of you, I have seen firsthand how you both go above and beyond and the extra mile for your clients and your families. And families that are approaching you for services are already going through so much. So to be greeted with a smiley face and a heart that truly cares really goes the extra mile for families, and both of you do that. And so I wanted to thank you on behalf of all the families that you work for doing that and for caring that much.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us. So I wanted to start off with the different steps that families may experience. So as we all know, autism is not detected prior to birth. So as there are other syndromes that are children with special needs, sometimes while the mother's pregnant, they can detect it, they can know what to expect, before having birth of what's coming. Whereas with autism, you don't see it coming. It kind of just catches you. And so, you give birth to a beautiful baby and everything is healthy, everything is going well. The first few months pass. It's not until those developmental milestones start to creep up on you that you start to notice, like, wait a minute, my child is not doing this, my child's doing this. And that's where the concern comes in. Now, at this time, usually parents have one of two ways to deal with it. Some will just deny what's before them and kind of close it out and shut it out and not even address it. And then some, the fear will consume them and they will dive in to getting whatever intervention, whatever appointment need be to get their child the help they need. Regardless of how they initially react, because of course we can't judge how a parent reacts to such a situation. You had certain dreams and expectations for your child, and then now all of a sudden you're faced with a totally different future. So let's say the parent is starting to have concerns. We'll start off with that. What are the main, or let's say common, red flags that a parent should look for between, I'm going to say, ages of 1 to 2 that are alarming.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can start.
Okay, I would have to say that some red flags to kind of look for are just like the ones that are most common out there. Some people say it's eye contact, some people say it's speech, some might even be like motor development and, you know, just kind of cognitive development. It always differs. Every case, I would have to say, is different. I always tell parents as well, like just people that I know, when they ask me, I'm like, you know, talk to your pediatrician and go from there. If you have a concern, state it. Different red flags I would look for too, which is something parents do, is compare certain kids to other kids. And like I said, again, like kids are all different. I don't think every child develops the same. You see some kids who, you know, speak 1,000 miles an hour, like at that rate, and they have autism. And then there are kids that don't speak at all, and then are just speaking and don't have autism. So I would say it's just those kind of like little developmental milestones.
Okay.
And I can kind of touch a little bit more on that as well. So we know over the last decade, there's been a lot of research about early warning signs. And we know that the earlier that the child is diagnosed and the earlier they get intervention, which means better outcomes.
Definitely.
And that's really the big main reason why we want to do early intervention. So Florida State University actually recently just came out with some research that shows that you can start looking for warning signs as early as 16 months, which is really awesome. And they've provided a lookbook for parents, essentially coming up with 16 different signs before 16 months, which is, you know, really awesome. And they also attached a new screener tool. So once you start to see that there are some red flags kind of coming up, or there's some warning signs, then it's time to potentially take a screener test to see, hey, you know, maybe my my intuition is right. And we know a lot of parents, they have that gut feeling. They're the ones that they know their child the best, right? They're like the superhuman. And we really want to give them a lot of credit for, you know, picking up on that intuition and that gut feeling that they do have. So we can go through a couple of those, you know, those red flags. So we don't have to touch on all 16 of them. And we're also going to provide this specific resource in the comment section for families if they want to reference it and kind of go through it. But as we know, babies are just natural explorers, right? We know babies are constantly in their environment and wanting to explore. And if your baby isn't doing some of those things, it's really important to kind of think about, okay, maybe this is some red flags. So to start off, so if you're having a difficult time getting your baby to look at you, that's a really big one. Most babies really want to interact with you. You're a source of reinforcement for them. They love you. They're smiling at you. And that really shouldn't be a difficult thing for families. And so that could be a red flag. Rarely shares enjoyment with you, and rarely is sharing their interests with you. So I know you have a little girl, right? Yep. And so I know she's probably constantly trying to bring things to you and share her interests with you. Laughing or smiling when you're laughing and smiling as well. Some of those are some early warning signs. If your child's not doing some of those things, that could also be some red flags. I don't know how much of this you want to go through.
Go through them. Yeah, they're important to know.
So if your child seems to be a lot more interested in objects than you, that could also be a red flag as well. You know, if they're more interested in looking at specific objects and looking at the people that are interacting around them, that could be a red flag. Sometimes, like what Donna had stated, some odd motor stereotypy. So maybe if they're moving their hands, fingers, or their body in some type of unusual way, that could also be a red flag as well.
So there are typically milestones that children hit. And then, like we said, if you've met, I think it's so important to make sure that we address is that if you've met one child with autism, you've only met one child with autism. And one is not like another. So even though we bring up these basic common warning signs or red flags, your child might meet none of these and still have autism.
Right.
Or it might meet some of them.
Right.
You know, so every child is different.
Or, a parent might be going through this list and thinking, oh my God, my child doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And if it's just one thing, that may not cause a concern. But if there's multiple in combination with another, if you're seeing multiple, red flags pop up and it's something that's consistent over time, that would definitely, raise a flag. And then that's a really good conversation starter with your pediatrician, like Donna had said, is go to your pediatrician, start having these conversations, or their teachers, and start to really figure out, hey, is this a problem? And it's okay to, even if you're unsure, to have that conversation.
So let's say if the warning signs are present, whether it be 1 or 2 or 3 or all of what you've mentioned. So we have the warning signs, we have the red flags, we have the concern. You said step 1 would be going to pediatrician. Let's assume, because pediatricians are not specialists in autism.
Right.
So let's say you go, because I've heard this many times from parents, that they go to the pediatrician at 12 months, 13 months, 14 months, and the pediatrician says, oh, give him some time, he's a late bloomer. Give him some time, late bloomer. With all due respect to pediatricians, they probably, because majority of the patients are probably just late bloomers. What do they do then? If they have a concern, they don't feel it was addressed with a pediatrician, their next step, where would they go?
So another step that they could potentially take if they're in the community, maybe with like a preschool or daycare center, is even having a conversation with a teacher as well. That could be an avenue to go down and say, hey, do you see any red flags with my child? How are they compared to some of the other kids in the classroom? That could be an avenue. And then there's also call centers and access centers with every single county where a parent can call and give all of their information, give their concerns, and they can be connected to a diagnostic center. And a diagnostic center is going to go through a full evaluation from a psychologist that's really going to give them, it is going to either say yes, they are meeting the qualifications of autism, or they're not. And that also is another route that a parent can go as well. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I'll also add, kind of just feeding off what Carly was talking about, the call centers as well. And like you said, sometimes pediatricians do that. Although I do think they are sometimes a good source to start out with. When they do get that response, I would recommend, like she said, doing that. And there are the screening tools that she was talking about. Like, a parent does know their child best. Screen your child. If you feel like there still is something and your pediatrician is just having you wait for it, go ahead, call those call centers. You're more likely to get in line quicker, because we all know how long the waiting process can be sometimes as well.
So when you mentioned 16 months, so because I know prior, it was the idea of wait to age 3. Age 3 is when you'll know. So would you encourage parents, even as young as 15 to 16 months, the signs are present?
Yeah, definitely if the signs are prevalent and they're there and parents are looking at some of those lists and they've gone through a screener and it's showing signs. My son or daughter is experiencing some of these warning signs. I would say it's definitely in their best interest to go and get a full diagnostic evaluation, because the quicker, again, that they get into therapy, the better the success, right?
Definitely.
And so the earlier that you catch something, then the more success you're going to have with treatment, right?
And just a message that I want to get across with what you're saying, we're talking about this first step of making that call. This is probably the biggest step a parent is going to have to make in their child's life, because you are admitting to what you're seeing before you. And so I don't want in any way undermine that huge step.
Yeah.
And that takes an enormous amount of strength on a parent's part to say, okay, I need to have this conversation with my pediatrician. I need to have this conversation with, like you said, the teacher or a call center. It's so crucial that you do have it, though, because, like you said, the earlier, the better. So, as we know, there is no cure for autism. However, ABA therapy is one of the proven therapies to show results for children with autism. And the earlier, the better.
Yeah.
So, getting that, even if, let's say, you did that call and you went through the steps, you got the therapy going, and at the end, your child at age 3 or 4 or 5 caught up or was doing well, and it turned out to be a developmental delay or, just kind of something developmentally and it wasn't exactly autism, you didn't hurt the child, correct?
Right.
You if anything, you helped the child.
Right, yeah, and ABA therapy is one-on-one therapy. There really is nothing better than that, is to have one-on-one direct instruction, and it is so individualized for that specific learner. And that's another really important piece about ABA therapy that really makes it effective, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really, really individualized for that specific learner. And you're 100% right to touch on how overwhelming it must feel for parents to get that diagnosis, or even to have that first phone call of, hey, doctor, I'm seeing some red flags, and I'm really scared, and I don't know really what to do. And so to even just give some of those parents a peace of mind that there's so many professionals in the field that are very passionate about helping, and they really care a lot. And I know I've seen you work before, and you do an amazing job. And I think it's really important for families to know that they're going to be okay, and that those expectations, even though they may change, you're still in a beautiful journey with a child, and it's just different.
Just different.
It's just different.
And that's something we want to point on, that it's not that you lost the child that you were, having these dreams and futures for. It's just a different vision now.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be an even more beautiful journey. And something I've always said to parents, and some people think I'm crazy when I say this, is that a parent that has a child with special needs, it's truly a blessing, because you know the value of the smallest milestones, the smallest accomplishments that most parents take for granted. I know, and I've noticed a lot of my nieces and nephews just pointing, at a little over a year, they're like, oh, look, this guy, and I'm like fascinated by that skill.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're pointing. That's a huge accomplishment that their parents are just noticing it as a normal thing that they're doing, but that's huge.
Even as professionals, like, you see that every day too. Like, not only do you appreciate like your clients more when you're making progress, but you do go out into the world and you look at other kids, and you notice like that every little milestone and every little thing does count.
The
as
value
well.
behind that milestone. And so let's say we reached the point where we know the red flags, we made the call, we got confirmation from either the call center or the pediatrician that, there's a chance that the child is on the spectrum. You touch base on ABA therapy. For those who are not familiar with ABA therapy, can you both kind of explain and describe what
Sure,
that
kind
is?
of just like what Carly was saying. It's one-on-one, it's individualized. Each child has their own treatment plan, and no two treatment plans are alike. So just because something or a certain kind of intervention works for one child, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the other child. We're constantly evaluating, we're constantly following up. Treatment plans are constantly changing. As the child makes progress, the treatment plan is changing as well. So it's not like, oh, well, here's a treatment plan and this is what we're going to do with your kid for the next year. It changes. It could change every day. It could change every few months. So
Now, is a treatment plan usually between parents and therapists? Do they both kind of work together to?
The behavior consultant will come up with the treatment plan. Parent concerns, of course, are taken into consideration as well. Who knows the child better than the parents?
Definitely.
It's all done by like observing the child, kind of just seeing how they are in their natural environment, how they are with social skills, how they are as far as like when demands are placed on them, and then you go from there. So what I do, like, and I tell people about ABA therapy, is the one-on-one. You don't get that everywhere else, and it kind of also just helps the child also take these skills that they're learning and like applying them at other places and with other people as well.
So that one-on-one is crucial.
Yeah, that was a great explanation of exactly what ABA therapy is. And just to go back just real fast too, so the diagnostic centers where they're going to get that evaluation, they have to get it through an approved autism evaluation center.
Okay.
And there's a list of those on the internet too, and maybe we could also put that in the comment section for parents to be able to reference. There's about like 12 or 15 around in the south eastern Michigan area. So if parents know exactly where to get that evaluation from. You can't just go anywhere, unfortunately, and sometimes there are longer wait lists for families.
So we'll have, I'm sorry to cut you off, so we'll have, and thank you all for joining us and for listening in. So as Carly mentioned, she's going to have a list of some centers, call centers, and different websites that are highly recommended. We'll make sure to add them in the comment section as well. So
yeah, that would be
families have
really
that.
helpful for families just to reference and make sure that they're calling the right people. Because there's a lot of information on the internet, and it's like, okay, who do I call? How do I get in contact with the right information? So we could provide some of that for your families tonight.
That's great.
But like Donna was saying, so ABA is an evidence-based treatment for autism, right?
Okay.
And really what we're doing is focusing on increasing behaviors that are going to promote more independence, and then we're also going to be decreasing problem behaviors and behaviors that affect learning. So if there's learning that's not taking place, we're really going to figure out why is that learning not taking place, what's the barrier, and we're going to break that down for the child into very small specific skills so that they're accomplishing things and really making a lot of progress one-on-one, like Donna had said.
Now, a plus that I am familiar with ABA is that the therapist kind of goes above and beyond, where it's not just with the child, when they actually touch base with the school setting, they touch base with the home setting, so that everyone is working kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
Correct? So it's,
Yeah, there's definitely a huge coordination of care that's super important. So ABA obviously is one specific therapy that the child may be getting, but speech and language therapy may also be in play, or OT, or physical therapy, and then the child may also be in school.
Yeah.
Or they could have some medical variables that could be affecting things as well. So making sure that the behavior analyst is really touching base with everyone, meeting with everyone, going to do observations or going into the school, that's a huge part of everyone being on the same page, because multiple things could be going on, and if you're not really sure of all the interventions that are taking place, that would, then we could cause more harm than we could do good. So coordination of care, and I know you probably can touch on that too a little bit, just how important it is.
Yeah, so as far as like the school settings, you know, sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, I have, sometimes it's difficult to get into the schools. Sometimes it's a piece of cake, it depends on the school district. It takes a lot from the parent too. If the parents are advocating for their child as well, and then like we have to advocate for our clients as well. So when we are coordinating with everybody, it's kind of just like getting everybody on board so that we're kind of doing the same thing. Although there are different kinds of, you know, therapies going on, as Carly mentioned, it's our main concern is what we have in common, and it's this child, it's our client.
Yeah, and so you would highly recommend that, let's, you know, for those who are not familiar with ABA, it's usually a couple hours a day, or depending on insurances and whatnot. It's, because I've seen this from parents, that it's not a babysitting service. It's not a therapist that's going to come to your home and kind of work with your child for 2 hours, and then the therapist leaves, and then you go back to just giving your child whatever they wanted without having that, you know, expectations of them showing some form of communication to receiving their want. So how crucial is it for the parents to be on the same page as the ABA therapist?
I mean, people have busy lifestyles. We understand. The parents can't do everything that we do when we're at work. We understand that. It's very important that parents show up to meetings and that they understand what's going on and why certain things are happening. Sometimes, why is my child working on this? This is so simple, but it's just like a skill that we're teaching to like build off, you know, to teach other skills as well. Parent involvement I think it is. It's very important. It is. It's key, but it's not everything. I tell some parents I know work over like 16 hours a day. Like they don't see their child all the time, and that's okay. But you know, having them in services is enough. And yes, it is. It's not a babysitting service. It definitely isn't.
There's hard work that goes into it.
I don't think a babysitter can do what like therapists or technicians can do.
And technicians now, for those who also are not familiar with ABA, you can get the therapy either at a center or at home.
Yeah,
correct?
or both even. Sometimes we have, I'm sorry. Sometimes we have student or clients getting therapy at only the center, only in home, or even both. We have clients that are also getting, you know, like maybe an hour or two of observation at school as well, and also in the community.
Yeah, definitely. So
it's customized then for each child what works.
Yeah, definitely. And a big part that you touched on with parent involvement is that generalization piece, right? So if the child can do a specific skill with me, but they can't with the parent, then is that skill really learned? Is it really valuable? Is it really significant for that family? So what we really want to work on is generalizing the skills that we learn, that the child learns within the center with the therapist, to make sure that the parents can do it as well, or that the child's responding to their parents. And then we also have to work on maintenance, right? Just because we work on it once and they master a skill, we've got to maintain that skill, and we've got to make sure that the families are working on those skills in home. And really, that parent involvement also comes down to buy-in, right? If a parent's not really involved, it's probably something that we're not doing right. And so we want to make sure the parents are really interested in what we're learning, or what the child's doing, that they need to find value in that too. You know, because the parents they're putting in a lot of effort, and they're putting in a lot of time into this therapy. And we know that, and we don't want to have them be working on things that the child's really, it doesn't matter to them, right? So parent involvement and input is so important for families, and we just want to make sure that parents feel like they're a part of that, and they're on our team. They're working with us.
It's a team effort, So what would you, now I know every case is different, but if we were to just somehow generalize, what could a parent do at home for, like, they just had a child that was newly diagnosed, and there's a significant speech delay, because that's a common factor that I know I am approached to by parents. My child doesn't speak, my child's not talking, my child's not talking. Now, of course, we do the speech therapy, we do the ABA therapy, we do all that. At home, just the one-on-one time with their parents, a car drive. I always say every moment is a teachable moment.
Yeah.
So what are just, and again, this is a general statement, so obviously each case is different, but what are just off the top of your head, some things that some parents can do to help their child with language skills?
Yeah, so one thing that we tell our parents is to start putting things out of reach for their child, right? So they have opportunities to ask for those things. So like if something's up high, that they don't have easy access to, they then have an opportunity now to go up to mom. Hey, mom, I really, I want the Cheez-Its, or, the ice cream that's up there, but I can't reach it. So putting things out of reach is really important.
That's a good one,
We also want to make sure that we restrict things that are, so if everything that they would possibly ever want is just free access, right? Then they're really never going to have an opportunity to ask for it, right? So we really work on making sure we kind of put things away at the end of the night, or we have big clear plastic totes that the child has to ask, their parent to make sure that they can play with it. So those are two really good ways of, trying to gain more requesting from the family. And then we really work a lot on pairing play with parents and the child. So that's another really awesome way to work on language as well. And parents can work on kind of playing with toys the way that they're thinking that their child's going to play with the toys too. So if it's with a car, it's like zoom, 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 and they're moving the car around, and the child could maybe start to imitate some of those same movements or some of the same words, and really be interested in playing with their parent as well.
So question just off of that, would you recommend a parent, because you said for them to play the appropriate way, so to speak, with the toy, but let's say the child did not enjoy moving the car, they enjoyed flipping the car over and kind of just playing with the wheels. Because the child is showing an interest in the car that way, should the parent stop the child from playing that way and encourage them to play it the appropriate way, or do they allow them to do it in their own way?
Well, definitely at that point where you're really wanting to pair play with the parent and the child, we're really trying to facilitate this really positive interaction. So if a child's playing with a car and they're flipping the toys, the wheels, and they're spinning them, and a parent's, stopping them and not allowing that to happen, typically, a child's going to be like, I'm out of here. I'm not playing with you right now. Like, that's not what I want to do with this toy. And so we tell parents to meet their kid where they're at. Right? And so if they want to flip that car over and spin the wheels, the parent's right there being like, wow, that's so awesome. I love the way you're spinning the wheels. They're really descriptive with the types of wording that they're using. And the child's sitting there looking at them like, all right, like I got someone here who I can play with, right? Who's okay with whatever it is that I'm doing. So no, we typically don't tell parents to restrict some of those things from happening. But then maybe a play goal would be something that they work on in therapy, where we find things that they're actually interested in, like maybe playing on a slide or going on a swing, or something that feels a little bit more appropriate,
Okay.
and we teach them those skills maybe in a very isolated setting first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mona, before she answers, we have some
Yes.
questions from Facebook
Oh, okay,
and some
definitely,
comments
yes.
from Facebook
Okay.
that we probably should highlight
Yes,
before we
thank
move on.
you for watching and tuning in.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching on Facebook. If you have a comment or a question, please feel free to write it on the comment box below the live stream. We have Zalfa. She wrote a lot of good comments. One of them is it is very important that everyone working with this child, including therapists, parents, teachers, social worker, and pediatrician, all be on the same page and work together. We have Wissam. He's saying reach out to the teacher, and the teacher will then discuss your concerns with the school social worker and school psychologist. And then we have somebody saying great information, and then someone is asking who would the parent reach out to in order to have support in school for a child with autism. And there is other comments. Thank you everyone. Hassan is saying much needed show and information. Thank you for raising awareness about autism. A lot of other comments, but this is the question we have right now. If we have a child, autistic kid in school, who should they go to for support in school?
I can answer that. So every school district is different. Every county is different. I would reach out to to the teacher directly. Have the parent reach out. If your child is in ABA services, have them reach out to the school as well. And then from there, they usually have either school social workers, and then they can even put a parapro in the classroom with the child, depending on their ABA therapy. Sometimes we have technicians going into the school, of course, all depending on the school system, the child's therapy. Would you recommend anybody else?
If they're having difficulty, I guess, getting access to services within the school, there's also advocates that are trained and know the legal system of through insurance. You can also seek out an advocate, and I think that could be through like their medical insurance as well, or just people out in the community. There's a couple of different nonprofits like Autism Alliance of Michigan, I know, can also connect you with different advocates in the area if you know a child or a family is having difficulty getting services in school, which they really shouldn't. But if they are, there are other ways that they can go around that as well.
Definitely, and we know that that's something that also. Thank you for reminding us about the importance of schools, because I know that's something that is a challenge for many families. And just touch base, I don't know what district the child is in, but Blue Hands United also helps. We're kind of like the middleman between schools and resources. So if ever you needed anything specific for your child and you didn't know which steps to take, or you weren't able to reach the connection that you were looking for your child, feel free to reach out to Blue Hands United. That's kind of what we do. So we'd send you to them. But so whatever we can help with. And most school districts are pretty good, like you mentioned. They have a good check and balance system where, if, the teacher helps as best she can, and then there's a social worker, and then all the pieces kind of fit together to work for that child's needs. Now, speaking of schools, this is something that I personally see as a big challenge, just kind of all over the country, especially with, the new laws that are taken into place and the cuts that are taking place with special needs. How can a classroom, best function to meet the needs of a child with autism?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and definitely a huge challenge that you're seeing right now, and I know we are too, definitely facing with a lot of challenges with that as well. So it really depends on the learner, right? It depends on the child and kind of where their best fit is within the school, and the school will do a pretty good job at placing them in the correct classroom, whether that's they're in the gen ed classroom, but then they get pulled out for specific extra help. That could be maybe like they go to a resource room, or they get pushed in during certain times that the child feels comfortable being in the classroom. But again, it really just depends on the learner. But what we can do is go into schools and show teachers how to assimilate the whole classroom to be good with having the child with autism in there as well, or what are some extra like strategies and interventions the teacher can do to make sure that the child is successful in that classroom or whatever placement that child is in.
Okay.
So we do sometimes some school consultation as well.
So ABA is another, just where I want parents to notice all the positives that are coming from getting intervention. If you've noticed, there's really nothing negative that can come out of it. It's all beneficial to the child. So I know it's very scary and there's a lot of fears and a lot of stigmas that are out there about diagnosing your child, but once you do, and I'm just going to say it in Arabic, you تحمي ولادك, you know, you really تحميهم because it's protecting them. That diagnosis is now allowing the ABA therapist to intervene and help in all perspectives, the home, the school, the community. So if your child is receiving ABA therapy, but is having a difficult time in school, the ABA therapist can plan with the school then and kind of all come together.
Yeah,
so that's,
definitely setting up meetings.
Okay.
We can go to their IEP meetings as well to help create goals within the school system. And like you said, yes, parents sometimes don't want to get that diagnosis. But if there's a problem now, there's probably going to be a problem in the future. And it's so much better to have that conversation early on. And it's a really hard conversation, but it's better to do it earlier than it is later where we have a much larger problem. And it's scary though, nonetheless.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I haven't been in those shoes before, but I will say that I do know that it is very difficult for lots of families.
Definitely.
Mona, if you allow me to ask the question,
Yes,
I'm
of
sorry I'm
course.
cutting you guys off, but
okay.
we're trying to keep people, involved and engaged
No,
on the
definitely,
Facebook
we love it.
show
That's what
too.
we want. We want to hear the feedback.
Yeah, we want to encourage them to
Yeah,
keep writing their
definitely.
comments, keep writing their questions. So, because we have amazing specialists with us today, we have Hassan. He's asking any nonprofit that has Arabic-speaking members to work with parents with autistic kids. And I'm gonna extend the question: is there any specialist that speaks Arabic? And I know Dana probably speak Arabic. Especially, we have a lot of.
I do. Specifically where I work, almost all of our technicians speak Arabic. We have people who speak Spanish, Mandarin, and so on. I know nonprofit organizations. I know Blue Hands United.
Yes.
You guys do. Also on the Autism Alliance of Michigan, on their website, they have resources in different languages as well. They can connect you with people who have who speak other languages as well, and. Usually, even if when you go in for like an assessment or a diagnosis or anything, you can always ask for a translator. There are advocates. People do want to advocate for you. They want to help you.
Yeah.
It is available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So don't let language be the barrier.
It should not be a barrier. No,
definitely,
it's available.
It's available. Definitely. Yeah.
And I would definitely say too, if you're not understanding something, there's a lot of jargon in this field, and that is something that it doesn't matter even if language isn't a barrier already. That even sometimes me just explaining it to my husband, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so if that is the case, then I know that some people may have a really hard time really fully understanding what it is sometimes that we're saying. So anytime that something isn't making sense or you need something re-explained in a different way, that should be something that any behavior analyst should be doing from the very beginning.
And parents should not be hesitant to ask the questions because, like you said, I born and raised here, but if you're explaining to me a topic that I'm not familiar with, I'm not going to understand.
Right.
So I need to ask the question so I can better understand because those questions are going to help me help my child.
Right.
So definitely ask your questions to the teachers, to the therapists, to your doctors, because those answers are going to help you.
Right, and really what we're trying to do too, especially with our center, is really make our parents really educated consumers, right? So they're there, and we want to educate the families and really empower them to feel like they can make decisions with us, or they can say, hey, Carly, this isn't working for me right now, just making sure that they feel like they have a voice and a say. And once they get that diagnosis, someone else is just going to take over, for my kid, and they're just going to do whatever they want, and that's not the case at all.
Again, like Carly was saying, getting the family involvement and having those resources. A lot of centers, they have parent trainings. There's opportunities for siblings to come in to work on play. And again, going back to like the technical language that she was talking about, even if somebody is fluent in English, I mean, there's stuff we learn every day from like research. The research is growing, and ABA is a growing field, so we don't even know everything. There's always a new study out there. There's always something new. So I always tell parents there's no such thing as a dumb question or a question that you should be embarrassed to ask, because at one point in our lives we didn't know it either, and we had to ask it.
true. And then you touched base on like siblings, so I kind of wanted to bring that up. They're kind of the forgotten soldiers behind all this, because having a diagnosis in a home affects the whole home.
Right.
You know, it affects the parents, the siblings, the grandparents, aunts and uncles, all family gatherings. Everyone is affected by this diagnosis, and so their lives change. So with ABA therapy, do you also give kind of, I want to say, like tools and techniques for the entire family to
Yes,
work
we
with the
welcome,
child?
we tell parents all the time, if you can bring in the siblings, bring them
Yeah.
in. We'll work on social play. Parents can watch how we integrate like the play together, how we can have them like taking turns, and whether the sibling is older or younger, kind of just having them understand, you know, their sibling with a diagnosis as well. And then
That's great.
parents watch us, what we're doing, and we tell them, you know, take that home and have them play this way at home.
Yeah.
Grandparents, family is always welcome. You know, of course, if parents allow it, we allow it. And
Yeah.
of course, it's very important, because having somebody with a diagnosis at home it affects everybody in the home.
Yeah.
There's also there's a nonprofit called the Friendship Circle. I
Yes.
don't know if you're familiar
Yeah.
with it. They're great.
Yeah.
They also have sibling support groups too, as well.
Okay.
So if it's like an extracurricular after school kind of thing, but it's it's like a very special time for them, because they do, like you said, sometimes get forgotten.
Yeah.
And a lot of focus is on that one specific child that has special needs. And so it's really important to just make sure that that sibling feels really special and included still, because a lot of challenges will arise if things aren't addressed.
Definitely,
You know,
definitely.
but that definitely is a hard topic
Definitely.
and subject.
From your experience from working with families, what would you say is the biggest struggle that either the autism world is facing or that you as professionals are facing with the growing rate of
Yeah.
autism?
So something I know that I've personally kind of struggled with is some of the kids that don't get in super early, that maybe are only getting in at 4 or 5 years of age, then they have to go to school by 6 or 7, right? And they have to go to school. It's mandated by the state that they need to go to school full time. But then where does ABA therapy fit in?
Okay.
Right? And so sometimes that could be in the evening, but I know after a long day's worth of work,
Yeah.
I'm pretty spent in the evening, and so are the children as well. Not to say that evening in-home therapy or center-based therapy isn't effective, because
Yeah,
it can be.
it's long.
It's a long day for those
Yeah.
children. So I've been finding that that's been really difficult, and really pushing into the school to figure out, you know, what's going on at school, how effective is school right now. Would they be more effective in a one-on-one center or in home, you know, with a one-on-one behavior technician? So that's been something that we've been struggling with a little bit. I think as the field continues to grow and we see this where families are more okay with getting their child diagnosed earlier at 16 months or 18 months or 2 years of age, then that child should have between, you know, 2 to 5 to 6, like a good
base
4,
to
you know,
go.
4
Yeah.
years of ABA therapy, and
Yeah.
then they're ready to go to school. And that's really what it's set up for. But
Okay.
unfortunately, if those kids aren't getting to us until they're 5 or 6 years old, or, you know, then we don't have a lot of time with them. And then it's, you know, when do we provide that ABA therapy? That's
So really, to Teresa, what you said, so crucial, again, that early diagnosis. It's so crucial because, like you mentioned, the earlier you're diagnosed, the earlier you get the therapy in before school becomes mandated. So it's so important on so many levels to recognize the warning signs. And again, even if you recognize the warning signs and you're wrong, you recognize, you know, you
That's
saw
okay.
it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, if you recognize warning signs and you're like, is it not? Go
Doesn't
for it. Do the process, do the evaluation, get the therapy. And if you ended up being wrong, you know, as a child grows and is ready for school, you're like, okay, he doesn't, you know, I mean, it wasn't autism. You didn't hurt that child. You
No.
saved him or
Right.
her, you know, in
Right.
the long run.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's why early warning signs and early diagnosis is crucial. And it's so important for that success of the child and to get that time in. I mean, some families, when they get that diagnosis at, say, 18 months or 2 years of age, they are getting 30 to 40 hours of ABA therapy, this really early intensive amount of hours, and then they're like, all right, the gap is closed now, and they're getting pushed into kindergarten just like the rest of their peers, and they're doing really, really well. And so those are the best success stories.
So how would you both describe, I'm going to bring up the celebrities that obviously had money to pay for God knows what kind of, intense therapy, but the celebrities that are claiming their child was cured, or are, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the book that Jenny McCarthy wrote, where she says there's a window of time and you can pull your child out of autism, or all the celebrities that are, or not even celebrities actually, just the stories that are out there. How do you explain that? Is it just that they made so much progress that they're high functioning, that they're blending into society? Was it a misdiagnosis? How would you best explain that?
I mean, I can speak to this for a minute, and then if you want to touch on this.
Yeah.
But so if anyone ever says anything about a cure, I would just be really wary of that type of language. So we know that there really is no cure, and we don't also know what type of learner those children were, and how quickly they maintained skills or learned skills, and then how they were kind of assimilated into the community or into their school. So it is a little bit hard to touch on some of that stuff, but it's a really important topic to bring up, and it's just looking at really the science behind the autism treatment. And if parents are looking at different therapies and there's no science behind it, then I would stay clear of some of those things. But yeah, I don't know if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Just kind of like what Carly's saying. I mean, if the research isn't there, if it's not evidence-based, ABA is. If it's not evidence-based, stay clear of it. If you're concerned about it and your child is in ABA therapy, talk to your consultant. Ask them. I heard of this, and they should be able to provide you with reasons of why it is or is not the correct way to go. As far as you were saying, somebody said that there was their son got pulled out of autism. Again, we don't know what the child, what their diagnosis was, or what their background, what their learning skills were. Again, it's easy. It's just important to do it early on.
And get the research in and make sure you're following.
Make sure that it's research on evidence-based. There are some crazy stuff out there that they'll talk about, and hey, like my child can take this pill and they're magically cured, or the special diet.
There's a lot of it out there. That,
just be very alert about that.
But we can focus back on zooming into ABA, where it is, like you said, evidence-based, and it's a holistic approach. So there's no harm there, with that therapy.
Right. There's a really good website too that we could put in the comment section. It's called asatonline.org. It's asatonline.org, and it basically just spells out all the different therapies that are out there on the internet. And it basically shows parents, hey, this therapy needs a little bit more research, or hey, this therapy is not effective. Be wary of this. Do not do this. It really just is going back to that science piece, and really making parents, like I said, really good educated consumers, right? We really want to educate them and show them, hey, all these things are out there that have testimonials that. I would be wary of some of those things, or these crazy cured stories. Some of that stuff I would definitely steer clear. If you had, given that it's Autism Awareness Month, and we're the goal behind this, and please send in any questions for the professionals if you have any, so they can, you have some? Okay.
We have one question. The question is, what can we do as a community for parents or families that are not well informed or do not have the ability to determine that their child may need help or even recognize this signs? And she's saying that I'm really directing this towards parents who have a language barrier, or even some who are undereducated, with all due respect. How can we help them realize that something needs to be done, even if their pediatrician may have pointed this out to them? Many just go home and ignore these conversations. And then Khudr is saying, great show, we need to raise awareness about autism in our community and educate parents about science and resources.
I agree, especially different cultures look at things differently. I'm happy that it's growing in the Arab culture and the Middle Eastern culture. It is, people are more aware. Don't be embarrassed. That's something that I always say, there's really nothing to be embarrassed about. You're not a bad parent. If your child has autism or any diagnosis, it's not your fault. You're not a bad parent for doing that. I would actually say you're a better parent for addressing this and getting the help. for our community members, I would definitely say to accept people. Don't, I wouldn't stare at somebody who is at the grocery store and dealing with their child. Like, you don't know what that person's going through. Maybe that person is getting help and their child is just having a meltdown. Like when you're sitting on the airplane and something like a kid is kicking the back of your seat, you don't know what's going on.
Through.
So like as a community, it's to accept and to raise awareness. And I know there are like organizations like what you guys are doing. It's raising awareness, and you guys are doing a great job with that. And with the language barriers, again, we touched up before, it shouldn't be a problem. There's a lot of help. And not only in our community, that, you know, this goes out to like different cultures as well, and different communities out there.
Yeah. And I would just speak to say too, just continued conversation in the community is really important. Not stopping that, and alone just raising awareness, but then raising that acceptance level, right? So it's instead of it's making it more normalized, right? And it's okay, and we're going to accept any family that's in our community, but really continued conversation and outreach events like this, or anything that can promote that education to the community, I think is really beneficial, and that's where some of those families maybe that are kind of more reluctant, maybe we'll start to see, hey, this is okay. You know, I have support. I have people that I can go to, and I'm not going to feel ostracized in my community. I'm going to feel accepted.
Definitely, and I think that's one of our goals with this show, is to do that. And the goal behind Blue Hands United, and even the work you guys do, is we're trying to set the stage, so to speak, to encourage acceptance with families. We want to start the conversation. We want the questions to come our way. And it's not just about that parent, because that parent that is going through, and we said there's different stages that the parent goes through before they get to the acceptance part. They have to go through it. They have to go through that mourning stage. They have to go through that denial stage, and the fear and the worry and the consume. And then hopefully the goal would be that they'll find support through outreach programs like this one, to come forward with their concerns. And then we as a community have a job, like you said, to accept. We need not to judge. We need not to stare, like you said. You know, oftentimes at the grocery store, you brought up that example. The other day I was at a grocery store and I saw a little boy in the back of the car, and he was jumping and making noise. And I knew, I knew if anything I wanted to help the mother, not stare at the mother. You know, whereas I knew the other people were annoyed. You know, and to give another example, I was at the doctor's office for my son for an X-ray last year, and there was a little boy who was screaming, running back and forth. And then one of the ladies sitting just stared at the mom and said, "Can you calm your son down?" And I was so frustrated, because I was like, you don't know what that mom is going through, and that mom knows that's her son, and she's accepting of that. So you need to be accepting of it, and just accept. You know, there are things that are not in the parents' control. It's not, and I'm going to say the word in Arabic, it's not a tarbiyya issue. You know, this is a raising. You know, it's not. You know, so this is, you know, it could be overstimulating, a sensory issue. So there's more going on behind that child that's having a meltdown than what we see in the, you know, in the public. So I think we as a community need to accept.
And sometimes it's not, you know, I mean, I have a 2-year-old and she doesn't have a diagnosis, and she's a typical functioning child, but I mean, if you see the meltdowns we have, you know, for things that she wants. And so just imagine, like, how many parents are going through this. And I mean, I get looked at sometimes when we're in public, and, you know, I'm lifting my daughter and trying to get her to go. It happens, you know. But again, just even if you can't offer your support, don't kind of just give those like judgmental or, you know, you're a bad parent kind of like looks, and you know.
So if we, I want to thank you all for the information, both of you. We've had a lot of good information. Thank you for all the questions. If we wanted to, let's say, end on a positive note, because it's positivity is what matters, it's Autism Awareness Month. So if you had one message to that parent that's at home watching us, who is in between, who is concerned, who has fears, what would your message be for that mother or that father?
I would just say, I see this online all the time, and I don't know who quoted this, but your child is different, not less. So your child isn't less than everybody else. They're not below somebody else. They're just different. And it's okay to be different. You're special if you're different. For parents that are struggling with this, You know, there are support groups out there. If you're still not ready to go get a diagnosis, reach out to a support group, reach out to those hotlines. Maybe they can, you know, push you in the right direction and help you that way. So I would definitely just say, like, don't think your child is less important or, you know, not as smart as peers or other children around them.
Yeah, that was just different.
And that was said really well, Donna. But I would definitely agree in what everything that you had just said. But you know, really thinking about that parent and knowing that we are here and we're going to empathize with you and we're going to really show that we care. And again, looking at that, you're not different. You're not less. You know, maybe a little bit different. I always tell my families, when you find out that you're having a child, you're so excited, you're like on an island, right? And I tell them, you're just on a different island, right? You're still on an island. It's still beautiful. It's still amazing. It's just a different one, right? And it's just a different path that we're going to go down, so that things are going to be okay. And I think parents need to hear that often, right? Things are going to be okay. This is going to work out. We're going to be here to help you every step of the way through this. And I think that's what parents really are looking for, is that support. And that's what, you know, each of the places that we work at, that's what we're here to provide for them. And their child is going to do amazing things.
Definitely. Definitely. With your support, they will. Thank you. I want to thank you both and thank Educare Services again for helping sponsor this, for putting together this platform so that we can discuss this much needed topic. And in honor of Autism Awareness Day, I hope everyone was wearing blue or went blue all over the world today. Buildings were lit up blue, and we wore blue. So please wear blue. Day's not over yet. And then in honor of Autism Awareness Month, we're really excited. In Dearborn, we have a lot of support coming our way. We have several things going on. April 28th, the Arab American Museum is offering a sensory-friendly Sunday where they're going to have different activities, and I believe the timing and everything will be posted on our Facebook page. And we also have on April 19th, the Islamic Center of America, in collaboration with UNI and ICA Ladies, is also lighting the mosque blue. And we are going to have different stations where it's going to be interactive, where you'll get to feel what it's like to be in the shoes of an individual with autism. That'll be really excited for that, so everyone can kind of understand a hands-on approach of what it's like to have autism. So we're excited for that. And then our event, April 14th, it's a free event for all, for children with special needs. 1 to 2 is sensory friendly, and then after 2 it's open to the public. We encourage all to come. We think it's important for all children to mix. You know, that's how you raise awareness, is getting that acceptance in from when they're little. So that we can encourage that. So please join us. Please follow our page, Blue Hands United, for upcoming events related to autism. And if you have a concern out there, if you are listening to us and some of this kind of touched too close to home for you, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Our information will be on the website. We're here for you. We're here to answer questions. And I think the most important thing is you're not alone.
That was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.